Senior Editor for the world's foremost cricket website, Cricinfo, and broadcasting for the ABC. You would have heard him with Gerard Whateley and the crew so far in the series. Now, I must say, he is hamming it up delightfully in some of his zany chats and analysis with Jared Kimber on Cricinfo. Over the years, he has also written with his distinctive style for the Melbourne Age, Dawn in Pakistan, The Guardian, and The Telegraph in London, and appeared even in the Wall Street Journal. Born in Libya, the son of a professor of statistics, he was educated in England and is an economics graduate from Manchester University. He is a worldly soul with exceptional communication skills and a love for life. He has lived in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia and speaks Urdu, Hindi and French, and thankfully just a tad of English. When he was last with us 7 years ago, he was accompanied by Anisa, his vivacious wife of just 10 months then, a Delhi girl he had met at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore during a match between India and Pakistan. A pity some of the Pollies couldn't do the same thing. This time Anisa could not be here because there is another mouth to feed at home in Abu Dhabi. His daughter Sarah, who is now 5. Please welcome him back, Osman Samiuddin. How are you coping with fatherhood?
Not so badly. That was a pretty big sort of bump up for me, Mike. Thank you very much.
Well, I think, anybody who writes for a broadsheet in this day and age somewhere needs a bit of a puffer. We're living in a world of the tabloid and the short attention span.
No pressure now. No pressure whatsoever.
In fact, I was saying to Ed Cowan before that the Hurricanes no longer the Hurricanes I heard last night, they're now the Canes. We can't even get Hurricanes now. Such is the short form of everything in life. It's so depressing. Tell me, do you have a captain today? I mean, is Ms.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We
have splendid. The same one?
It is the same one. It is Ms. Balhaq, same one we've had for 6 years. He came out yesterday and made some jokes about, 2016 is when he made his decision to retire, but it's 2017 now, so 2016 is done and dusted. 2 years resolution not to retire, which is, as resolutions go, not a bad one.
It's extraordinary to have your two most senior players. He's what, Misbah's 42, and Yunus is 39. But they have been, you've built a brilliant new side around these two very, very remarkable cricketers, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the kind of influence they have in that dressing room is, it's almost unheard of. I think they go maybe even beyond Imran and Javed in their time. Imran and Javed, I think so, yeah. And, the younger guys, they've had a younger team around them than Imran and Javed always did. And I think guys like Asad Shafiq, Azhar Ali, you've seen them score big here on this road for the first time, really. And they've had a profound influence on the way they keep themselves, on the way they bat. And just the way they are off the field and on the field about cricket. I think, Yunus in particular, I think has been he's been a kind of guiding light for a lot of them. And Misbah, he's with the beard now as well. He's such a kind of fatherly figure to that side. And I think it was a lot of the team that kind of convinced him to take back the retirement and, bring in the new year in a more cheerful way.
Yeah. Without just detracting from the performances of Stark and Lyon and co, it must be said that the capitulation in Melbourne was unsettling. For those of us with memories right around the cricket world, it did revive memories of grimmer days, and I just wanted to examine that. The collapse here, of course, famously, when you were last here in 2010. Do the Pakistani players understand the stain of post-Salam Malik and post-Salam Butt, what they have to live with? Are they aware of it?
Absolutely. The days after that, the spot fixing scandal in 2010, I think, if you speak to guys like Mohammad Hafiz, young guys like Asad Shafiq, they were really the worst days of their lives. They were under such intense scrutiny. And all of them felt tainted by it. And I think, one of the things that Misbah has done over the last 6 years, he's made a real effort to kind of go out there and show the world that, this is a clean team. And that Pakistan is not like kind of a country to be looked upon suspiciously everywhere they go. I think you saw probably the fruits of that in England earlier this year. They made a real effort. They hired a PR consultant, which is unheard of for a team like Pakistan. They kind of preempted whatever bad news there might be out there because there always is one kind of story on the verge of coming out. But I think, Misbah especially has made a real effort. And there was a lot of anger on the side. A lot of this side, there was a lot of anger when it first happened, when they felt that, they'd been kind of unfairly saddled with what 3 or 4 players had done. So I think, Misbah is aware of it. Yunus Khan is very aware of it. I think it hurt his pride very much that he was associated with players from that time. And I think they've gone out of their way in England. I think pretty much on this tour as well, they've kind of gone out of their way in their own way to show the world that they are, a new Pakistan side, completely detached from sides that have come here in the past.
I think it should we look into it as being particularly significant that Misbah just recently was announced the ICC Spirit of Cricket Award winner for the year. Now, in the context of what has happened over the last 10 years, that's very, very significant.
Yeah, I think he wasn't sure what the award was, to be honest, when he first got it. It's one of those ICC awards, one of those ICC things that you're kind of like, well, they felt compelled to give this guy an award. Let's give it to him because, he was great with those push-ups at Lord's early in the year or whatever. So, I think, you're right. It does show a little bit of what Misbah has done with this side. And I think, especially again, the England tour was such a big tour for them, but they've been doing it pretty much away from the spotlight of the world in the UAE, in places like Sri Lanka, in not so much South Africa, but in other countries they've gone. They've been kind of doing that for the last few years, and they've got a very friendly bunch of players. They've gone out of their way to make friends with other players in opposition teams and stuff. And I think that has come from him, but he's so committed just to the game itself. I mean, it's hard to stop him talking about cricket. And I do fear for what he will do after he actually retires. Because, he is completely wedded to the game. And I think that's the kind of thing that he's put into the players, to be servants of the game more than anything else, really.
I think the rehabilitation of Mohammad Amir is particularly interesting. I think everybody felt, although he had erred badly, that the skipper had taken dreadful advantage of a vulnerable young man from the Swat Valley. Was everybody happy that he should be rehabilitated in this way?
No, absolutely not. There were guys, Mohammad Hafiz came out publicly that he wasn't comfortable with Amir back in the side. Azhar Ali, who's the ODI captain and a senior player now, he wasn't comfortable, and he made it clear to the BCB. And I think they had a right to their own opinion as well, because they did suffer in the aftermath of what Amir had done. I think again in that Yunus Khan and Misbah played a big role. They came out and said that everyone deserves a second chance. They were fine with him being allowed to come back into the team. And I think since he's come back, we've been watching them in training and stuff, and just how he mingles with the players. I think most of them are pretty okay. He's pretty friendly now with even Azhar. And I think the only sign of any friction is in how many catches they've dropped off his bowling. I think, it's funny, we can laugh about it now, but I think the count is up to 12 in the last 10 tests that he's played since he's come back. So, whether that's their way of showing that they're not particularly happy with him back in the side, I don't know. It could just be Pakistan being Pakistan.
Yes, indeed. Perhaps not everybody here would be aware of the backstory of Amir, the boy who had to come from the hills, get past the Taliban, get down to Lahore to practice. Give us just a little insight into how tough it was for the kid before all went awry.
Well, I mean, he came from a really modest background, I guess. He came from a village, a small town, Gujjar Khan, which is about 70 miles outside of Rawalpindi. He grew up playing tape ball cricket on the streets, which is how you kind of get into the game over there. And he was spotted actually by Iqbal Qasim, the left-arm spinner. Spotted by him, taken to a private academy in Pindi, where he effectively, he almost worked as a D-boy while he was also trying to sort of learn the craft of bowling and stuff. And then he got picked up and has worked his way up from under 19 level. I mean, Pakistan spotted him. That's one of the things about the Pakistan system. People think that a lot of talent goes missing, but they do actually come across a lot of talent. They pick them up. It's just that they don't nurture them as well as they can. But so they picked him up, and he died. People said there was a lot of sympathy for him around the time he did what he did. I always kind of felt that he was far more aware of what he was doing than was maybe led on. I know obviously Salman Butt and Mohammad Asif played a role as seniors in that, and they maybe pressured him into it, but I did feel at the time that Amir was fairly secure in his place in the side, to not have to worry so much about what was happening. You know, he was the next star. I don't think he was going to be dropped. I don't think Salman Butt would have dropped him without it looking very, very odd had he not, you know, accepted whatever he did with the spot fixing and stuff. So I felt a little less sympathy for what he had done than a lot of other people did, even though he was young. But the thing about him was that he realized early on in the whole piece that, you know, he has done it and he has to pay for it. And so he was one of the first. He was the first to acknowledge that he was guilty. He served his time for it, and you know he kind of stayed away from the limelight. It's remarkable really because he didn't bowl competitively or even practice bowling really for 5 years or for 4 years. He came back a year earlier in his first class cricket. So for him physically to come back the way he is, I know he's young still, but for him physically to come back the way he is and still be pretty much Pakistan's best bowler. As you guys have seen through the series, he's been Pakistan's most effective bowler. For him to have come back, I think that is probably the most remarkable thing about it. For an athlete to go out of the game 5 years and come back and still be as good as he was, almost, but for the dog catches, as good as he was, I think that's probably the most remarkable feat of it all.
Yeah. It's interesting the support that he had internationally too, and Mike Atherton particularly really went to the bat for him, didn't he? Which was interesting.
Yeah, it was. Again, I think his youth and the kind of brightness of his talent worked in his favour. I think that.
Is it so that Salman Butt has returned to first-class cricket in Pakistan?
He has, as has Mohammad Asif. They're both playing the same side, same domestic side, and they're doing well. But I think Pakistan, as far as this administration goes, they kind of draw the line at Amir. It could lead to tricky legal situations if, for example, Salman Butt does continue scoring runs and Pakistan's openers don't. But I think in their minds, this team as well and the management are pretty firm that we're not gonna publicly rule them out, but they're not getting back into the side with those two.
Now the thing that to spare sort of upsets me because I haven't been able to get back to Pakistan since 1998, and I've got some very fond memories of touring there, as has our next guest speaker. So is there a chance of international cricket being returned to Pakistan in the near future?
Well, so they've had a series. They've had one ODI series in 2015 against Zimbabwe. It didn't go off without incident, unfortunately. There was an attempted bombing, but the security, I think, held firm, and I think the incident happened at least a kilometer away from the stadium. But this year they're in talks with the West Indies to fly over for a couple of T20s. The Pakistan Super League, which started last year, they're planning on the final to be held in Lahore this year. The rest of the tournament will be in the UAE. They're building towards it slowly. I think they've realized that it's not going to happen in a rush. I don't think a lot of big teams will come immediately, but they're slowly building towards it by attracting other teams, by hosting one-off matches like the PSL final there. Maybe in the next 5 years. I mean, I'm no security expert. I'm barely a cricket expert, but maybe in the next 5 years at some point, you could see some kind of movement back towards the country. It's a little bit safer than it was. It's a relative assessment, but I think places like Karachi, which I visit now regularly, they are a little bit safer from the bigger attacks than they were, say, 3 years ago. So gradually, I think slowly, they will get there.
What is the relationship now between the elite cricketers of Pakistan and the Pakistani people? I mean, it seems, it's so long, but virtually no contact in Lahore, Karachi, or Pindi, all the great stadiums who want to see their players, so they have to see them only on television. What has it done to the relationship between the people of Pakistan and their elite cricketers?
I think in many ways I think it's made it more intense. I think because they've missed seeing them live in Pakistan, and just missed international cricket generally, I think it's made whatever love and passion they had for the game. It's not even love and passion. It's almost a compulsion. It's something that they can't avoid being into cricket in Pakistan. It's become literally a compulsion, and I think this kind of period of exile has actually made it even more intense than before. And the players still spend time in Pakistan, obviously. So when they're there, when they walk around anywhere, they're regularly guests on TV shows, they're still in the news, and they still get mobbed. Wherever they go, they get absolutely mobbed. So I think that love for the game, that compulsion for the game, is probably only intensified over the last sort of 7 or 8 years in Pakistan.
It interests us too, when we see Test cricket from the UAE involving Pakistan, there's very, very few people in the stadium in Abu Dhabi or Sharjah or Dubai. But There's a change, I think, is there not, with the PSL, with the short form stuff? You're getting bigger crowds in the UAE.
Yeah, well, you know, they had it in Dubai in Sharjah last year, the first PSL, a monumental effort just to get it up and going, and it was a logistical nightmare, you know, because they had to play it in the UAE. They would have preferred to play it in Pakistan, but they got big crowds there. We were surprised, genuinely surprised, because a lot of Pakistan's limited over international matches. They would draw crowds, but you know, not mega crowds. But I think with the PSL, because I think it had a smattering of international stars as well, and you know, there was entertainment on the side and stuff, they actually managed to get full houses, which is something that hadn't happened in a Dubai stadium, especially in the Dubai stadium, which is pretty big. You know, they've got a capacity of about 25,000. Hadn't happened there in living memory almost. So that they had a full crowd for one of the weeknight matches, which was unbelievable. So I think, you know, that kind of told them how much interest there is there. And, you know, but for them, the payoff is for it to be ultimately held, the whole tournament in Pakistan. You know, that ups their profits, that ups their revenue by, I would say, close to 50 to 100, you know, somewhere between 50 to 100% is going to make a difference. And there will be sold out crowds there all the time. So, you know, it was good to see that kind of crowd turning up. And it was a bit like the old days of Sharjah, which, you know, you've probably seen back in the 80s.
Yeah.
When they used to have a real atmosphere around the whole place. So it was a little bit like that. And it was good to see. But I think ultimately, you know, Pakistan's aim is to bring it back to Pakistan somehow.
But the Arab kids still not paying any attention to the game?
Not so much.
No.
Not so much. They barely pay attention to their football. But.
Abdul Rahman Bakat must be so sick and tired of all of that.
He was there for some of it. He was there for some of it. He enjoyed it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Why is your chairman, the charismatic chairman of Selected, our charismatic Inzamam ul Haq, he hasn't come to join us at this? He went to New Zealand. Why hasn't he come here? Is it a snub?
I think he had a sniff of what the results were going to be like. No, Inzi, I'm not sure we're surprised about why he's not here. I thought you know, he would have been here. I think some were actually fairly confident coming into this series, which is why I think it hurt Misbah more, especially the way they lost in Melbourne. I think, you know, that was part of the reason. I think, you know, who knows, maybe Inzi thought that he doesn't need to be here because they're going to do so well anyway, but it's not quite turned out that.
And we couldn't let you go without asking about Imran Khan. The politics, leading his party still, he's distanced himself, it would seem, very much from the world of cricket. Any goss for us in the world of Imran?
Well, there's always gossip floating around Imran Khan, isn't there?
Another marriage is in the, apparently.
it was in the papers a while ago.
Okay.
Hopefully it lasts longer than his last one. Well, I think about 6 months.
This is the trouble with all-rounders, isn't it?
He's doing well for himself. I think politically he's doing well. I'm not sure I agree with a lot of what he does, but you know, he's carved out a place for himself in that political landscape, and he's very much kind of the anti-establishment rabble-rouser. And yeah, he's which is I think far different from when he was captain of the Pakistan side, where he's very much part of the sort of Western establishment. I think he was a very popular figure everywhere else. But yeah, he's done well for himself politically. I think the last few years have really kind of turned his fortunes around as a political party, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he's prime minister someday.
You think it's achievable?
You know, anything Imran sets his mind to, I haven't seen him fail, whatever he set his mind to. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years or so he's prime minister on stage.
Right. And just one last tip on the catching capacities for the Pakistanis in this Test match. Are we optimistic?
You know, I've learned not to kind of make any predictions ahead of the Test match. I think they will maybe get their first Test win in Australia in 20 years now. So they'll have at least something to look forward to.
Yeah, well, it's been a delight, Osman, having you back in the country again. Thank you very much for your contribution today. Ladies and gentlemen, Osman Samiuddin.